kick in, and then we'll talk about stuff. So I'm very excited to discuss this one. All right. Well, we are in fact live for the year end of Accademia Giallo. I feel like I need to say that with my hands all the entire.
And I think you should say it with your hands.
Accademia Giallo.
Maybe with puppet hands. Accademia Giallo.
You know what? Don't tempt me. Next year, you're going to show up and I'm going to
There
have.
might be. That's it. If we brought puppets in, I am down.
So we're talking about a film that it's having its 50th anniversary this year, The Bloodstained Butterfly, by Duccio Tessari? Is that right?
Sure.
Okay, or Duccio. I've heard.
I want to say, yeah. It's funny. I was just having this conversation with a fellow aficionado who was questioning whether it was Lucio Fulci or Lucio Fulci, and I was like, I'm pretty sure it's Fulci because I've never heard anybody say Fulci. But he was like, well, usually you have the double C in Italian to make it a ch. And I said, oh my God, have we been saying Lucio Fulci's name wrong all this time? But then I went and researched it and like, no, we have not. It is Lucio Fulci.
Well, and on top of that, even if we had been, we're in the company of like millions of other people.
That's right. That's right. Sorry, Lucio Fulci. I'm sorry. Your name is not that anymore. It is, in fact, Lucio Fulci.
Plus, Fulci sounds too much like false teeth, and I don't want to,
who needs
describe
that?
ageism to him. Yeah. So let me ask you about this Bloodstained Butterfly. I can't even remember how this got recommended on the list. Who came up with this? Was this you or is this Kitley?
I think it was me, and it was because I had gotten the Arrow Blu-ray and I had not gotten around to seeing it yet. But also, it gets cited often enough that it was one that I was eager to check out, and I was not disappointed. I can see why it gets kind of singled out because it is a little atypical of the genre, and as such is a bit of a standout, an outlier, because it's a really well-made film. But I don't know that it has the same kind of trappings that we've come to associate with the genre.
Yeah, I mean, and this... Well, first of all, I should just mention who you are. You are Aaron Christensen of Horror 101 with Dr. AC, joining me back here again. I am, as always, Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat. Our other two jolly professors, as they I like to think of them, were unable to make it today. They sent in their absentee notices to class in a little bit under the wire, but it's totally fine. You and I will hold down the class. But I want to send out big love to John Kitley and Brian Martinez. So this movie, I feel, falls into a category of a few different types of films we've talked about this year, and it falls into the category of, is this Giallo? Because, well, we've got all the tropes, and one day I will actually get around to making me a Giallo bingo card.
I can't wait. The holidays are right around the corner, so that can make for a handy gift.
I don't have that kind of time. Maybe next holidays. But so there are murders, but definitely far less than we are used to in these films. The killer does not wear a black coat or a black hat or black gloves. There is some mild stalking, but this is like a Rashomon courtroom drama. Secrets of the suburban families, like getting all twisted up, and it almost works outside of the whole kind of horror stalker genre. Almost as a drama, it holds up. Is this Giallo?
I mean, I think the thing is that like it gets lumped in with the Gialli, and I don't know if that's enough of an answer, because you have like on the Arrow Blu-ray, Gialli expert Troy Howarth does an extensive video essay of it, and he considers it a Gialli even though it doesn't follow a lot of the same so it's kind of like it's that age-old question of like, what is a horror film? What is the design of a horror film? I certainly don't think this particular film, whether it's a Giallo or not, classifies as a horror film. I think it's very much like you said, a courtroom drama. There's, some emotional intrigue with, various partners coupling, some who probably shouldn't be coupling. And, so in that regard, I think there's a lot of that kind of sexual intrigue that we've come to associate with the genre. There are, in fact, 3 murders, but it feels like maybe only, I don't know that any of them. Well, we had a flashback of the murder of Francois, the main murder that's being investigated. And that one is a little, brutal, but it's nothing as flamboyant as things that we've seen, by Martino or Argento or Bava. So, I mean, it's a relatively subdued murder mystery in that regard.
Yeah, I think the intensity comes in kind of unexpected places. I was going to call it a love scene, but there's no love there. It's just a sex scene that turns really kind of ugly and weird. And it's also blended with another, kind of sex scene, which is something I don't think I've seen in a film. You've got 2 couples who are kind of going at it, and it transitions to another couple, and they're thematically tied together, kind of like the wings of a butterfly, if you will. But and it's really cool. But the scene where, oh my gosh, why can't I think of his name? I should know this. Giorgio, the person who ends up becoming very important. I want to talk about spoilers right now. We'll talk about that soon.
We have to talk about spoilers because Ian and I have to figure this movie out together.
We do. But before we get to that, there's just a scene where Giorgio is having sex with someone, and you can see him going through an episode in his mind. Whereas there's so many flashbacks and kind of imagined sequences in this movie. This is the one time where you don't see what's going on inside a character's head. It's all in his face. And I almost wish I could get inside there, because I don't know if he's about to murder the person that he's, doing stuff with, or what's going on. But it was genuinely frightening in a way that some of the murder set pieces of other Giallo we watched have not even freaked me out that much.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and Giorgio's played by Helmut Berger, who shows up in quite a number of Italian films. I think most horror fans will recognize him from Faceless, which but that's definitely one worth checking out. And he'd also appeared in Dorian Gray. I want to say a couple of years after this film.
Well, he was good, and this is one of those films. And again, we'll just kind of talk. Well, we should probably talk about a synopsis of what the hell is even the Bloodstained Butterfly.
How about it?
It's essentially, there's a news anchor in Italy, of course, who gets framed or arrested and put on trial for the murder of a teenage girl who turns out to be the best friend of his young daughter, and that's the high level of it. But while he goes, spoiler alert, he does get kind of convicted and sent away. But as we've seen with so many of these kind of movies, not just Jolly, but, slasher movies, you think you've got the killer and locked them up, but oh no, the murders are still going on after the person who everyone was sure did it is, tucked away. So then it becomes a mystery of, did he do it? Did he have help? Like, what's going on here? Was he set up? And the answer to all those questions is sort of. But what I loved about The Bloodstained Butterfly is how confused I was about, like, am I watching a Giallo film throughout most of it? And I quickly didn't care, because it's so well performed and so well written. I feel like they take the best elements that are kind of shoved to the side in a lot of these movies and put them on full display. You've got the pair of detectives who are on the case. And they're kind of funny because there's a running gag about the coffee. It's either too hot or too cold, or it's too sweet, or it's not sweet enough. It's terribly bitter. But they're also really kind of good at, I don't know if they're good at their jobs, but they're serious about their jobs, and they're not constantly like shown up by the heroes. And the intrigue of all the different relationships that are kind of woven throughout this story, I was captivated. I honestly, at the halfway point of the film, I didn't care if anybody else got murdered in this movie. I just wanted to see how people are going to get out of these sticky personal situations.
I absolutely agree. I think you pointed out, like, I really love the screenplay. Like, I think it's I mean, certainly we've had our thorny screenplays already, Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward, and like just ones where lots of unexpected twists and turns. But yeah, as you said, we have kind of the innocent man wrongly accused, with some really damning evidence against him in the courtroom, and then suddenly, bit by bit, those bits of evidence are dismissed, and you go, gosh, well, maybe he's not guilty, and then the murders continue, and so you're like, well, clearly he's not guilty. And I loved being taken on that ride, because, and for the longest time, I was like, how is Giorgio really connected other than being hung up on the girl that's dead? Because he doesn't really have a lot of action. He has a lot of emotion, but not a lot of action.
Well, he ends up dating Sarah, who is, the best friend of the girl who was killed, and
Right.
the daughter of the man who was accused and sent away for this. So they kind of end up in a relationship, and there is all this kind of a weird tension around this. We know that Francoise, when she was murdered, she had some school books with her, but also a record of classical music. And later on in the film, when Sarah and Giorgio are in his apartment, he puts on some classical music, and there's this really great frame, it's almost like a mobile painting or something of him putting on the record and then just like kind of hunched over and then drooping with shame or guilt or anger, sadness, something, but cranking up the music. And she's like, what the hell is going on? And I'm kind of like, yeah, I want to know how you're wrapped up in this. But they don't give you the answers until in this way. It's very much like Scream, where you don't find out anything until like literally the last 5 minutes of the movie. And when you do find it out, it's such a huge reward. I did not see this ending coming. Did you? And we'll talk about the specifics in a little bit, but did you see this coming?
Absolutely not. I was like, what? Oh, okay. I want to just kind of take a minute, like Gianfranco Clarisi, I think is how we say his name, Gianfranco Clarisi. But he has a number of notable screenwriting credits to his name, so I just want to rattle off a few of those. In addition to Bloodstained Butterfly, which is the first one that I was really familiar with, but he had a hand in either writing or co-writing Don't Torture a Duckling, The Antichrist, Jungle Holocaust, and Cannibal Holocaust, and House on the Edge of the Park, New York Ripper, Murder Rock, and The House of Clocks, which is one of Lucio Fulci's not great films, but certainly a notable film. So yeah, he's certainly had his share of genre heavyweight screenwriting credits, and so it was nice to kind of like realize, oh, that's the same guy who has delighted us through, so like New York Ripper. We talk about scripts that you're like, I don't know where this could possibly be going.
Well, I'm flabbergasted that he wrote these other films, because though I love Don't Torture a Duckling, and we had our conversation about that, and also New York Ripper,
Right.
That is a film that has tons of upsetting, really out there violence.
Right.
And this movie is like the model of restraint in comparison. And this was earlier on, before Duckling and Ripper, correct?
Correct. Well, this one came out in 71,
Mm-hmm.
and Duckling was 72.
Okay.
And 71 was kind of like a banner year for Gialli, because Bird with Crystal Plumage had come out in 1970. Argento had both Four Flies on Grey Velvet and Cat o' Nine Tails. Both came out in 71. It was just a banner year for, I think, Strange Wife and Mrs. Ward came out the same year. So we just had a lot of Gialli, because Crystal Plumage made a lot of money. So let's cash in.
Well, I wonder about that, because, and I wasn't there, I wasn't born, so this is all just kind of theorizing. I feel like this is a case of a genre becomes really popular, it has its moment, but you've also got people who are helping to build that genre, but also figure out not only what the rules are, what the kind of tropes, but also what to push and how far.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have a movie that is completely tame and cerebral, and then you go ahead to something like Don't Torture a Duckling, and then eventually the New York Ripper, it's like, well, I don't know that the screenwriter was like, I got to kind of compete with this more in your face, market saturation of, wild murder. But it feels like that could have been like, this was an excellent screenplay, as I think so was Don't Torture a Duckling and, New York Ripper in its own right. But it feels like an escalation, like maybe it was trying to compete and kind of stand out from the others.
Well, I would say that's probably true. That it was following, the Italian crime thriller was not invented at the same time as the Gialli. So I feel like it is kind of like trying to be a blend of the two. And in that regard, I think it succeeds rather well. It is about investigating these murders, but it's got enough kind of like sex and intrigue and, just some perversions of character in certainly not to the extent that we've seen, but like, we have our main character, is accused of murdering and perhaps sexually harassing at least a teenage girl. So, it's like there's plenty of juicy stuff to get into.
Well, right, but my point is the movie that he wrote that came, and I realize what I'm saying is A, completely theoretical, and B, also not giving any credence to the directors who adapted those screenplays
Right.
for the film. Their vision based on the screenplay. The screenplay may have been for Don't Torture a Duckling and New York Ripper, could have just been, and then violence happens, and the director's like, ooh. But my point is, Don't Torture a Duckling also deals with high school girls, but also has a very graphic method of killing and a very graphic forced abortion scene, which is not at all in the language of anything going on in this film.
Correct. And I will say that like this screenwriter, he did collaborate with most of the films that I cited. It's a co-screenwriting. He's co-writing the script with the director. So that's absolutely right. I think he is helping to serve the director's vision. And in this case, I think it was more about the mystery and the human emotions and the parallels. I think that's what our director here is more interested in, as opposed to something like Fulci, something like Martino.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of a tragedy because the one innocent in the entire film is, I think, Sarah, the daughter. Because I'm trying to think, there's so many different webs of it, people being entangled with one another. It's hard to keep track. But we're going to talk about it, and
will keep track. We'll track it for you, folks.
Yes, we'll do our best because I finished this movie at like 5 o'clock this morning, so it's a little fuzzy. But we're going to talk about spoilers. All right, so Alessandro Marchi is our newscaster, put on trial, sentenced. Immediately after the trial is over, you find out that his best friend / attorney is sleeping with his wife the entire time. Now that's something else. I had to watch this movie in 2 parts because my schedule being what it is. But when that reveal happened, when I saw that this morning, I was trying to rack my brain and see, were there clues that I was missing that the lawyer was a scoundrel, would have been having an affair with the wife of the guy that he was trying to defend, or was that meant to be a real shocker for the audience? Because my jaw hit the floor.
I think it was. I think it's intended to be a surprise. And it's funny because when he gets arrested, it's like it serves Giallo, not Giallo. How do you say his name? Giulio. It serves Giulio, the attorney, rather well because he does get to, spend time with Maria, which is Alessandro's wife. They do get to, shack up for a while. And Sarah even comments, like he's over here every night. So no, I think it's intended to be the kind of surprise bombshell that it turns out to be.
And what I love is that he also turns out, the guy's a scumbag. He lusts after not only the wife of his best friend or best client, but also his teenage daughter.
Yep.
But he's got all these like little kinks that are gradually revealed, so that it's the perfect red herring. You're like, okay, this guy has to be involved in these murders somehow. But spoiler again, read the banner, folks. He's not.
Right.
one of the things I thought was great was there's a scene where he's in bed with Mrs. Marchi, Maria, played by the lovely Evelyn Stewart, and he's after they've made love, I guess he's painting on her back, which is
Right.
something I haven't seen in. I don't know if I've ever seen that in a movie before. I'm like, what kind of kink is this? You don't really see what he's painting, but I thought I caught a glimpse of a woman's eye. I just thought would have been great if we had a shot of her going to the bathroom after he left, and he was like painting a portrait of her daughter on her back.
Yeah, because that scene's handled rather poor. Well, not he's shown in a rather poor light, I would say. Because later, as you pointed out, like he tries to put the moves on Sarah, Alessandro's daughter, Alessandro's daughter, and like his defense is, that's why men love young women, is because they're so irresistible. It's like, what?
I was surprised that Mom didn't pull out a switchblade at that moment.
He doesn't even begin to apologize.
But so she's traumatized by the death of her friend, by the fact that her mom is, her father's gone up the river. Her mom's sleeping with the attorney. She seeks comfort in the arms of this guy. Now, help me out with this. Did she know that Giorgio was with Sarah? Or was that just kind of like a guy that Sarah might have mentioned?
You know what? I don't know. I don't know that.
They don't really talk about Sarah that much because Giorgio seems so grief-stricken over her death that, I feel like it's a secret. Like that connection is something that we're only meant to know about and not necessarily Sarah. But I just feel bad that at the end of the events of this movie, she's also going to find out that the person that she was shacking up with murdered her father and was also sleeping with Sarah and murdered other people to frame the death. Like, what is her mental state going to be like after this whole ordeal?
Right. I'm just looking at, I don't think they had known each other before. They get to know each other as kind of like their mutual grieving.
Because he was in the park during he was a witness to the killer running away, I think, or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he discovered the body.
Right.
But during the trial, he's there, giving testimony and stuff. And eventually we see him and Sarah kind of like walking together and the relationship blossoms as weird as it is. But I like that this movie took its time in order to build up these characters and these relationships, while in parallel, there's this investigation going and this trial. And to spice things up, to keep it so it's not just a police procedural or a courtroom drama, we do get to see these little mini movies playing out of the detectives talking about what possibly happened. We get to see a scenario wherein it's kind of like a scene from My Cousin Vinny with the guy with the bad eyesight testifying before the court that, I saw those boys murder those people in the drugstore. It's the same thing. This lady testifies that she saw the Alessandro running away in the woods. Turns out there's no way that she could have seen that, and we get to see how, and it's a rather kind of a brilliant setup. In order to keep things moving and constantly entertaining, and also keep the audience a little bit off balance, because we don't always go into a clear-cut narration of like, now we're going to talk about what we're going to show you what we're talking about. It just kind of happens, like that love scene that I mentioned with the two couples blending into the other two couples. You really have to pay attention and go along for this weird ride.
Yeah, agreed. And I'm glad you brought up the whole thing of like the proving the evidence, because there's a lot of like kind of, I don't know, like there's a little thank you to the Italian police department. I don't know if that was in your copy, but there's a thank you to the Italian police department for their assistance in making of the film. And I thought it was, like there's a lot of kind of like, the whole fingerprint analysis where they show that this had to be his fingerprints, but then they also show that there was like the killer was wearing gloves, and so therefore it wouldn't have obscured the fingerprints and it wouldn't have left any fingerprints. And like the example you gave, I really like how kind of like it's a fun little like Perry Mason type of Italian style. And I think the police officers are they're funny, but they're not goofy. You know, we've had our share of goofy police officers who seem kind of inept, and these police officers seem like they're relatively adroit at their task, and they're just up against something that's a little more challenging.
Well, also we don't they you know we've seen in movies before in Giallo films where the police are very important to the story. They're certainly important to the body of this movie, but in terms of the resolution, at the end there's this really kind of a cool foot chase where there's I think 5 or 6 cops chasing Giorgio in the streets, but he eludes them. They get caught up and he ducks into a private courtyard. And then the cops follow him to the private courtyard, but Giorgio has slipped out, and the cops run into the person who owns the building. And she's like, "I'm going to call my husband." And they're like, "Ma'am, we're the police." She's like, "I don't care. I'm going to call my husband." So they can't go anywhere. But at the very end of the film, which resolves in this abandoned apartment building, the cops don't show up. There's no, I finally cracked the case. It's all resolved sort of cosmically, where we find out what's been going on. And Alessandro kind of finds out what's been going on because he gets a mysterious phone call. I just love that it's a tidy ending, but it's not the kind of cliche justice film that we are typically treated to.
Not at all. And I mean, since we are talking spoilers, can we talk about the ending?
Yeah, let's do it.
Because I found that, it's like, I don't know that I had seen that plot device before, where you have, a killing, you have a murder, you have that murderer caught and convicted, and then you have another killer or another person who is so upset at the murderer that he decides to kill 2 other people in the same using the same MO so that he can get the first killer released so that he can take care of him on his own. And I was like, that's I mean, we've had that kind of like, this time it's personal approach before, but I've never seen it played out this way. And I like the fact that, they went out and they like he gets an identical, weapon, and he proceeds to kill in the same manner so that it seems like a serial killer. And in fact, it's not. In fact, Giorgio turns out to be the only serial killer in the bunch.
Right. And we've seen, I think it was in The Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward, right, where at the very end, it's revealed that there are people kind of conspiring in a way that we hadn't expected before. Right. But this is like taking that to the nth degree. And I'm honestly surprised that, because it was an original take to me as well. I'm surprised that someone hasn't taken this and completely tried to rip it off in like an American, not remake, but just as a plot device, because it's kind of brilliant. I almost wonder, because next month Scream 5 is coming out, and I keep seeing the trailers. I'm like, this looks like every other Scream movie. What are they going to do in terms of like revealing the killer? It would be wonderful if they did something, if they took the bloodstained butterfly effect and applied it to that movie.
But yeah, I mean, again, I think it's it was something I hadn't seen before, and I think that's why we keep showing up for these, is to see what's the same and what's different. What new spin are we going to add to the formula? I didn't see any J&B bottles. Did you?
Yes, I did.
You did. Okay, good.
I did. But it's it's like everything else in this movie. You go in expecting, like, there's several shots, no pun intended, of alcohol on tables in various apartments. But it isn't until I think the middle towards the end of the movie where you actually see the J&B bottle and a character actually picks it up and pours a drink. But there's a lot of red herrings. There's bottles that have like a yellow top and a red label. And I think there's one that has like the red top and the yellow label, and it's kind of off and it's not officially J&B. But it's there. I will say that Alessandro is one of the most resilient and I guess healthy 55-year-old newscasters I've ever seen, because Giorgio empties like his entire pistol into this guy in their conversation. And he keeps like getting shot and then running away and then getting shot again and then struggling. And yet Giorgio, this like 22-year-old kid or whatever gets a switchblade to the stomach and he's like down for the count.
Well, this director, I'm going to use the skills of the internet. Duccio Tessari.
I like it better when you say it. That's great.
Duccio Tessari. Anyway, what did I say? Tessari. Yes. But his, apparently, I was doing a little bit of research, and his two best known features are they're called A Pistol for Ringo and The Return of Ringo, and there were a couple of spaghetti westerns. And he also did a little bit of writing apparently on A Fistful of Dollars for Sergio Leone. Wow. And there was definitely something about that western kind of standoff at the end there. You know, I thought, okay, that totally makes sense that this is a guy who, you know, that was his main stock in trade was that of westerns, because this classic confrontation, I mean, it's even shot like down like what could be a, you know, long main street where the two, you know, arch rivals are facing off against one another, and they close the distance, and, you know, and eventually both are dead. I do like the fact that there's kind of a poetic justice in that both of the murderers die by each other's hand.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I feel a little sorry for Alessandro because his murder seemed more like a crime of, as they call it, a crime of passion, not something that was premeditated, and he didn't go into the woods to kill this girl. It was just like, I think she rejected him and she wouldn't stop screaming, and he was like, but then again, it's like, well, what's he doing with the switchblade in the first place?
Also that. I was like, right, why do you have a switchblade again?
Right, but I'm like, my point is, like, Giorgio he's gone insane, and he has deliberately gone out and harmed innocent people to get to, so that he can kill again. So again, there's so many degrees of immorality in this film that the best you can say is, well, the cleanest person is Sarah, but the next cleanest is possibly, well, maybe Mrs. March. I don't know.
I mean, she's having an affair.
She is, and it's weird because, you know, the whole idea, this is a very kind of moralistic movie. It's like, well, if you hadn't gone around cheating, if you just worked on your marriage or left or whatever, then you wouldn't have ended up embroiled in this. And at first I thought that was going to be the fate of Alessandro March, just being locked up in prison for, you know, if he had not been the killer, he would have gone away for life, essentially for having an affair. And that's kind of like this own grim karmic, you know, justice. But I do want to take a step back. Oh, right.
We forgot about his affair. We didn't mention that. Did you mention his affair that he was having?
No, I didn't. Let's talk about that, and then we'll get to the other thing. Because I have a Friday the 13th connection.
Good. I'd be
can't end the year without it. Yeah. But so it comes out. Here's my one question related to what we're about to discuss. I don't know if they're plot holes or what, but there are two people who step forward way late in the film with evidence to these trials that go on. It just seems like, is this admissible? Like, why weren't they subpoenaed? Like,
right. Yeah.
Could they get in trouble? Like, this case was highly publicized, lady. Why didn't you come forth and say, you know, I own the shop where this guy bought these daggers or whatever?
Well, the one was his Alessandro's affair lover, that's the word, was out of the country apparently, so she wasn't available to be called forward. But yeah, the other one with the knives are kind of like, but yeah, I agree. I don't know if they're so much plot holes as plot devices.
Yes,
and bringing out the suspense.
And it's one of those situations where it's a mild annoyance, I guess, or just like brings up these kinds of questions, because the what they do for the story and the places that they allow us to go with the story, I think are absolutely wonderful. It's just I wonder, like, in the real world, because this film credits itself so much on detail, as we're talking about, like police work and you know, law and courtroom stuff, that I just wonder if these details are accurate as well, or if they're just like, I just need a bridge to get us from A to B, you know, why not? Right. But as far as the mistress being out of the country at the time, I wonder if they didn't have the internet back then, but of course. But I was like wondering, wouldn't if she's possibly a key case to a murder trial, wouldn't there be not necessarily extradition, but reaching out? Like someone has to know where she is. Can they get in contact with her, the resort, or the embassy, and just say, hey,
Right.
come back home. Your boyfriend is about to be sent to jail for murder.
Right. Yeah. You would think that would come out.
But I do like that that detail and the kind of I like what that whole affair says about the people that are in these relationship. Like Mrs. March seems genuinely hurt when she finds out, like it's almost like she had suspected all along that her husband was cheating on her, and she's almost indignant. There's that line at the table. I think she says something to Sarah about infidelity. I'm like, you're one to talk,
Right.
because I
Right.
know what you're doing behind closed doors. But I do want to say the connection I was going to make to Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning. Danny Steinman, I feel like, is all over this movie, not in the lurid, sexy, quote unquote, sexy details, but in the way that the forensic investigation is conducted on Francoise, because there's no like soundtrack, but the rain is so oppressive. It's the sound of the rain, the visuals of the rain. It's downpouring. Everybody's soaking wet. The body is like covered from all angles. She's fully clothed, which is another kind of deviation from the genre that we've been talking about.
Sure.
But I just felt like there was something about that filmmaking style that is not really evident in the rest of the movie, because this is a very much a daylight set film, except for when even her body is discovered during the daytime.
Yep.
But by the time they get all the investigators there, it's dark and it's downpouring. But there was something about that recalled A New Beginning for me, like the end parts of that film where everything is drenched in rain.
Yeah, I like it. Of course, at the end of the final chapter, it's also raining as well, isn't it?
Yeah, but I don't know. I feel like there's much more, possibly because the New Beginning climax takes place in a barn, which is like all these open doors and everything. There's like rain all the time. There's a lot of running around the rain at the end of final chapter, but it's largely based in a house, like houses
Sure.
that are right across the street from each other. Damn it, you're poking holes in my.
Hey, I'm just a big fan of final chapters, so I knew that one. I'm like making a little mental tally. I'm like, well, when else does it rain? Doesn't it also rain in, I'm pretty, I mean, doesn't it rain in part 8 as well? Like
it rains in like all of these movies.
It has to rain,
But there's something like, I feel like they were, if the rain machines are turned on to like a 5 in most of these movies, I feel like it was turned to like a 12 or maybe even a 13 in A New Beginning, because that's the main thing I remember about that movie is freaking rain.
I remember the hillbilly and his mom. That's what I remember about that movie.
Oh yeah, Junior and Ethel. That was
Oh man, I was like, wow, this is horrible. This is horrible. I can't handle these two. They can't die soon enough.
The thing that was most upsetting to me about Ethel's death was when she dies, her face goes like down into the soup that she's making, but then you see her hand like squeezing the tomato on the cutting board. I'm like, oh, it's just something weird about that. I don't know. Okay, so let's get back to this film, because well, what else do you want to talk about in relation to this film? I feel like this is where having 2 other panel members would have really rounded things out. No. But it's not that there's not a lot to talk about, but it's one of those things where you could talk about every detail and just like leave people with no reason to watch. And I think there's a huge reason to watch this. Let me ask you, you said you've got the Arrow Blu-ray.
Yeah.
I made the mistake of renting this on Amazon, because I think when we decided on this movie, the Arrow Blu-ray, it was like around Black Friday times, and I could have gotten it for like $15 or something. Like it was like a ridiculous sale. And now I'm kicking myself because I'm like, I want to own this movie. Tell me about is it a good disc?
Yeah, it's pretty rich in its extras. I'm just gonna pull this up really quick. So we have well, let's see. There's a 55-minute interview with Evelyn Stewart, who you apparently are a fan of. There's a 30-minute. It's called Murder in B Flat Minor, and that has Troy Howarth doing that as that visual essay that I was talking about. It's quite good. And then he talks to Helmut Berger. He talks to Lorella DeLuca. So yeah, there's quite a few. And then who did the commentary? Sorry, I'm just scanning here. Oh, Alan Jones and Kim Newman, which I haven't listened to yet, but those two are fantastic. Anybody who is a fan of Brit horror should be familiar with those names. Both of them have written several books on the genre, and both appear quite often in like horror documentaries and things like that. So I think it's definitely worth picking up if you're a fan of the film. I mean, you may want to check it out on the Amazons first, or some other streaming service for those of us who don't do Amazon. But I think that it's definitely worth picking up. I mean, Arrow is certainly, they're at the forefront of high quality Giallo releases. So anybody who is a Giallo fan, I'm sure, is familiar with the Arrow's work.
I kept thinking about that while I was watching this on Amazon, because it's a good, it's a decent transfer. I rented the SD version because it was like $1 cheaper or something. But the whole time I kept thinking there's so much texture and color and richness in this movie that I feel like would benefit from a nice high def transfer. And it's also, for reasons that we've kind of discussed, a movie that I really want to watch again and pay even closer attention, because I took pages and pages of notes, but I do that just because I watch so many movies that I have to, so I can remember what happens from scene to scene sometimes.
Well,
but but I feel like I'm gonna watch for Giulio's like side eye, or just his disposition or his demeanor in the earlier scenes before Alessandro was even put on trial. I gotta say, there is a lovely scene. Well, it's kind of spooky actually, where Alessandro has just finished his testimony, and then I think they announce, or they have sentenced him to jail, or to life imprisonment, and it's a close up of him in this cage, because I guess the Italian courtroom at this time, I don't know if they still do it, but you've got the people in the big kind of the big floofy robes and everything, and I don't know if there are any powdered wigs, but it's all very formal. And you had the defendant sitting in a cage with these almost cartoonishly giant iron bars with like 2 guards guarding him. But we start off with a close-up of him behind the bars, and as we pan out, we realize, oh, he's being sentenced to life in prison, and the jail cell, the bars he's being contained in, almost come to represent the oppression of the jail that he's about to spend his life in with the 2 armed guards. There's so much visual texture to this movie and imagination that I wonder how much of that was in the screenplay versus how much was the director or maybe the editor was like, hey, it'd be kind of cool to juxtapose these, or to really, because I don't know if that shot, the pullout shot, was intended as written, or if it's just something like they found like, oh, this would be cool to illustrate this point out of all the footage.
Right. And I mean, and I'm not familiar enough with Duccio Tessari's body of work. This is probably the first of his that I've seen. But as you say, I'm definitely, I think he's enough of a visual stylist that he's worth seeking out. Actually, I don't want to, like catch you off guard, but since this is the last Accademia Giallo for the year, I didn't know, do you have ready access to the films that we've covered this year? And I'm kind of curious, like, how you would rank them.
Okay, you did catch me off.
All of them were new to you, right?
I believe that's the case. Now, here's the thing. Just indulge me, folks, because you are catching me off guard. But I was
going to say, I realized this. But I mean, had we been thinking, we could have done the 12 Gialli of Christmas. And I wasn't thinking, because, it's the holidays. And so we had a lot on our plates.
It's okay. That's the thing, is like, fortunately, I have a terrible memory. So I do happen to have up the playlist for Accademia Giallo, which you can check out on the Kicking the Seat YouTube channel. So let's just go down the list. I've got 10 entries here. I don't know if we missed one, but okay. So we talked Death Walks on the High.
We took summer off, I think.
Oh, that's right. We did miss a month. Okay.
Took summer school off.
And this will be the 11th, so that's a full year. So Death Walks on High Heels, Don't Torture a Duckling, The Killer Reserved 9 Seats, Blue Eyes of the Broken Doll, What Have You Done to Solange? Oh, What Have You Done to Solange? That was the one with the abortion. Don't Torture a Duckling was a different one, right? Okay, I'm sorry, I got that totally mixed up. Apologies. Strip Nude for Your Killer, Your Vice is a Locked Door and Only I Have the Key, Black Sunday, New York Ripper, All the Colors of the Dark. And you're going to ask me like what my favorite one out of those was?
Wait, we couldn't have done New York Ripper this year.
Well, let me go into this.
And like that was 2 years ago.
I don't know. Let me see. That was last year. That was September 14th, 2020.
Okay.
Somehow. That
was my memory. I'm like, I feel like we did that one just before we did the Scarathon in October.
Okay, that's fair because I don't list these. I just throw them into the playlist. I don't necessarily list them by date. So I'll say we talked about most of these.
I think that
during 2021
most of them sound familiar for sure.
I don't know. They all make different impressions in various ways. And one of the things I love about going on this journey with you and with Kitley and with Brian is it's easy to think you're doing a series about a genre and sort of a slasher adjacent or an inspiration to slasher genre and think, okay, it's going to be a guy in a black coat and a switchblade. And how many times can we watch the same damn movie? This is not, I don't think I've seen a repetition in the bunch or one that I can say, this one's worth skipping. They're all, valuable and varied. Even Black Sunday, I forgot how that. I think we had a big debate over how that ties into Giallo.
I think you were making a strong case for it, but for anybody else who's right now being outraged and going, wait, what? That's not a Giallo. We agree, it's not really a Giallo, but it's kind of formative to the Italian horror film as a whole, and so it felt like it was required viewing, and Ian had not seen it yet, so
yeah.
So,
and that's sort of the downfall of having this like tricky memory and taking so many notes. Some of these titles, I look at the thumbnails, I'm like, oh, that's right. I remember what that was about. But some of the other ones, I'm like, I'd have to go back, and I think if I read the synopsis for some of these, I'd be like, oh, that it would all come back to me. But yeah, as far as being the most impressed or the most jazzed, I can't make that call because all of these films are unique and it's just so different,
Agreed.
I'm kind of scared that because that list that started this whole thing is like hundreds of movies long. We have to get to a point, right, where we scrape the bottom of the barrel. But is that even true?
I mean, I think we're probably going to be. We will be able to continue to. I mean, just in 1971 alone, on that Troy Howarth little featurette, there were at least a half dozen titles that I'd never even heard of, and I was like, "Oh, that's great. Thanks, Troy. Appreciate it." For those who are looking for a really in-depth exploration of the Giallo subgenre, Troy has a 3-part book series called "So Deadly, So Perverse," and it's comprehensive, as you might guess. So he covers kind of like I think he breaks it up by time period, and it definitely worth checking out. I think those are published by Midnight Marquee, so feel free to throw that on your Amazon wish list or go to your local bookseller and have them ordered in for you.
There you go. Before we wrap up, I feel terrible because
oh no,
I didn't have the comments on. All right, so we're just gonna catch up because our friend Big Swifty 500.
Oh heavens, I'm so sorry. Yeah,
joining the live stream. I had somehow I think I had the comments on, but then I switched over to the banner to turn on the spoiler thing, and then I had the comments off, and I'm just gonna go through these. So. Hey guys, always like this film. The murder in the park with the kids is a great scene during the rainstorm. Yeah. Well, because the murder in the park happened, just a bit of a clarification. The kids in the park, the rainstorm happened later, I think, as the cops were coming to investigate, because the murder in the park was like the afternoon, right?
Well, I mean,
Was it raining at that point? I don't think so.
the kid is wearing the full yellow slicker outfit when they're doing the hide and seek.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, all right. Again, terrible memory. All right. And then also a great score, yes, by Johnny Ferrio. Love how it goes from lush, sweeping, romantic orchestral music right into jazzy bebop at the drop of a hat. Very good call, sir.
Lots of Tchaikovsky thrown in just to kind of keep the rhythm going.
Yeah. Let's see. And J and B with so many exclamation points I can't even count them because the type is really small. I probably need glasses in addition to a memory aid, apparently. But yeah, thank you for chiming in. I'm sorry, we're just now catching up. But yeah, this movie. But again, like what we were talking about, it's hard to categorize this as giallo, but I also love the fact that people are categorizing it as giallo because it's just one more way of saying, if someone comes up and you said, "Oh, there's all those stupid Italian movies where people are just getting stabbed," and we're like, "Well, watch this one."
Right.
It's Italian. Exactly. It's very smart. There are stabbings, but it's not grotesque. It's perverse, but not grotesque. Can we put that on the poster?
There's a review. But yeah, I think, I mean, what we're finding is that there are many different flavors of giallo, not gelato, but giallo, and that if you stick around long enough, you will find the flavor that suits you, and perhaps find the filmmaker that suits you best as well. I think that's always what I have loved about these ventures is that it's all about discovering. And kind of like finding new tastes, new flavors, new names, and to be able to kind of follow that director down the rabbit hole. I'm actually kind of keen to check out the two Ringo westerns based on seeing this director's work here. And had we not had this on our roster, I might never have known about them. So it really is. I mean, I think that's just kind of the cinephile dream, is that you keep going further and further down the rabbit hole and keep finding more and more gold along the way.
Speaking of those spaghetti westerns, it wasn't until a couple weeks ago when I watched Enter the Ninja for Mark's podcast that I discovered Franco Nero, who was in the Django films. And so, yeah, man, are we gonna have to do another spinoff where we talk about Italian westerns?
That's an even deeper dive than I think the Gialli for sure. That you had you not seen? Have you seen Django?
The Django westerns that he was in?
The first Django, and then he did a couple others, but
no, we started off. There was Force 10 from Navarone was another film that we talked about on his show a couple weeks prior to that, and he was in it, and I was like, wow, he's really good in this. And then he shows up in Enter the Ninja, which is a completely different kind of performance. Like, wow, he's really good in this. And then I know he was in Tarantino's Django Unchained, like he had a part in there, but I don't think I recognized him or had any context. Oh no, oh gosh, I've stepped in it. Please, spaghetti westerns. Okay. We'll take it under advisement. There's only so many months in the year.
Well, we can certainly dabble in and amongst the kind of like we did with the Gialli, where we kind of hit the heavy hitters and then move down the line as far down as we feel. Because there's certainly there are some key spaghetti westerns that are among the best films I've ever seen. There's like Sergio Corbucci's The Great Silence is extraordinary. It's just a phenomenal film that just happens to be a Western.
All right. Well, I'll start making the list and see if I can rope you in, partner. Got to come up with a catchy title for that series. But all right. Well, I think this is about it. Oh, I had a question I want to ask you. You talked about how finding your flavor of Gialli.
Yeah.
What's your jam? Like, what's your flavor out of the types of movies that we've watched? Do you prefer these less violent, more kind of cerebral things, or do you like, where people are getting cut up and all sorts of weird, freaky stuff?
I mean, wow, not to like judge or anything.
In terms of the movies, just the movies.
I feel like I'm stepping into it. But I mean, because I am, um, I mean, I got into the gialli because I was pursuing kind of the Italian forerunners to the slashers. So I do enjoy watching the ornate, um, and gorgeously staged murder scenes. Like I think I do err toward that kind of uh, the more flamboyant examples, things like Tenebrae, Deep Red, where we're seeing a lot of artistic violence. Let's say. Now that said, I'm also a sucker for things I haven't seen before. So, you know, like once you get, I mean, I think that's kind of the thing with the slashers is that, you know, like you get really used to it, you like it, but then you kind of get a little bored by it, by the familiarity. And then when somebody can surprise you, you're like, oh, wow, that was cool. I hadn't seen that. So I think that's, you know, it's kind of a familiarity breeding contentment and contempt. And so you keep kind of like looking for that next big thrill.
I've not heard that expression. Familiarity breeds contentment. I like that. But it kind of, yeah, it kind of goes hand in hand with contempt. All right. Well, yeah, I'm not going to put myself on the spot because I don't have an answer. I do love your answer though. But I will say we're going to close this out with two final comments from Big Swifty. Yes, Dr. AC, the great silence is phenomenal. And then Morricone's score, OMG.
Yep.
Very happy there. So yeah, well, thank you for being part of this journey, another year under our belts, and we'll be kind of closing out this stage of Hammerland coming up pretty soon. So yeah, you're like an MVP on this channel. I really appreciate these dives.
Glorious ride this year. I thank you for your consistency and for inviting me along.
Of course. Well, it's the holiday season, so happy holidays, AC. Everybody, check out his stuff. The links will be down below in the description. And whether you're watching this live, like Big Swifty, or catching this on the rerun, as they say, if you like this stuff, please like, subscribe. Click the bell for notifications. Tell your friends. We're gonna keep Accademia Giallo going live into the new year. So check for notices about that. And yeah, until next time. Whatever that is. Are we talking torso next month? Did we decide on that?
I think we're talking torso.
Okay. Well, be on the lookout for Torso, another film I have not seen, but am eagerly anticipating. So with that, I'll let you go, sir. Enjoy your Sunday, and class dismissed. Let's see if I can do that again. Class dismissed.